Think about this. One single day. One muddy field in Belgium. And that one battle was enough to bring an entire empire crashing down. Yeah, today we are diving deep into the Battle of Waterloo.
Just try to picture it. You've got almost 200,000 soldiers, over 500 cannons, all crammed into a space just a few miles wide. The air is choked with smoke, the ground is literally shaking under your feet, and the sound is just a constant, deafening roar. This wasn't just another battle. No, this was the epic, bloody finale to more than 20 years of non-stop war.
But here's the crazy part. For all that epic scale, the guy who actually won the thing, the Duke of Wellington, called it the nearest run thing you ever saw in your life. So, what gives? How can a battle that was so decisive also be so incredibly close? How did it all come down to the wire like that?
Well, to figure that out, we've got to start with the man right in the middle of the storm, Napoleon Bonaparte. And this was his last, most incredible gamble.
You have to remember, just a few months before this, Napoleon was supposed to be finished. He was a defeated emperor, stuck in exile on this tiny island called Elba. But then, he escapes. He lands in France, marches all the way to Paris, and takes back his throne, get this, without a single shot being fired. This comeback tour, known as the 100 Days, was thrilling for his followers, but for the rest of Europe, it was absolutely terrifying.
So Napoleon's back, but he's immediately facing a total nightmare. All the big players in Europe, we're talking Britain, Prussia, Austria, Russia, they basically say, no way. Declare him an outlaw, and start getting their armies ready. Suddenly, he's totally surrounded by this massive coalition, over 800,000 soldiers. His own army? Way, way smaller. His only shot, his only hope, was to hit them first and hit them hard.
And his plan was pure Napoleon, audacious. It's the classic divide and conquer. He knew he couldn't take on everybody at once. So the idea was to drive his army like a wedge right between the two closest enemy forces. That's Wellington's Anglo-Allied army and Blücher's Prussians. The goal? Keep them from joining up. He'd fight one, beat them, then turn and crush the other. It was a brilliant plan for sure, but man, was it risky.
Okay, so the stage is set. Let's get to know the key players on the field, see how their armies stack up, and talk about one other major factor that day, the weather.
All right, so on the other side, you've got two very different guys teaming up against Napoleon. First, there's the Duke of Wellington. He's this cool, calculating, defensive genius, leading a mashed-up army from different nations. Then you have the Prussian, Gebhard von Blücher. He's 72 years old, full of fire, and he absolutely hates Napoleon. Whether these two could actually work together, well, that was going to be the key to the whole thing.
Okay, let's talk numbers for a sec. You can see right away, Napoleon has a bit of an edge on Wellington's army, especially when it comes to cannons. He's got way more. But, and this is the big but, look at Blücher's army. If the Prussians can show up to the party on time, the Allies suddenly have a serious numbers advantage. So you see, it was all about the clock.
So, the morning of the battle rolls around, and Napoleon? He is feeling good, supremely confident. When his generals are like, hey, maybe we should be careful, he basically scoffs at them. This wasn't just confidence, it was arrogance. And that belief that this whole thing would be a cakewalk, well, it's going to affect every single decision he makes that day.
And then, Mother Nature steps in. The night before, there was this massive downpour, just biblical rain. It turned the whole battlefield into a giant mud pit. Now, Napoleon's big advantage was his cavalry and his cannons, neither of which work very well in thick mud. So since he's thinking he has all the time in the world, he decides to wait. He delays the attack for hours just to let the ground dry out a bit. That delay, that lost time, is going to come back to haunt him. Big time.
And that delay, that fateful decision to wait, it sets the stage for one of the most intense, brutal fights of the entire day. A battle over one single spot that ends up having this massive, disproportionate effect on everything.
It's kind of wild when you think about it, right? All these grand strategies, the fate of an entire empire, coming down to a fight over a handful of stone buildings.
This right here is the Château du Hougoumont. It's basically a fortified country house. Thick walls, a big orchard. It was the anchor for the right end of Wellington's entire defensive line. Think of it like a linchpin. If Napoleon could just take this one spot, Wellington's whole defensive formation could just crumble.
So what started as just a small diversionary attack to distract Wellington, it just explodes into this all-out, day-long slugfest.
Napoleon gets obsessed. He ends up throwing more than 14,000 of his soldiers, we're talking 33 entire battalions, at this one farmhouse. The fighting was just brutal, hand to hand. At one point, French soldiers actually smash open the main gate with an axe and pour inside. It looks like it's over. But then, a few British guardsmen fight like mad and manage to slam the gate shut, trapping the French inside. An absolutely legendary moment.
In Wellington, he knew exactly how important that moment was. See, his whole game plan was to use these fortified spots to break up the French attacks, to make them waste men and time. By holding on to Hougoumont, his troops tied down thousands of Napoleon's best soldiers Napoleon desperately needed for the main attack elsewhere. This tiny battle within the battle, it was a huge win for the Allies.
So remember that rain delay? Remember the ticking clock? Well, while all those French soldiers are getting bogged down at Hougoumont, that clock is still ticking, and Napoleon's worst nightmare is about to walk onto the battlefield.
The afternoon is where everything changes. Just after 1 p.m., Napoleon sees it, the first sign of the Prussians on his flank. It's exactly what he was afraid of. By 4:30, they're not just there, they're attacking his right side. And then at 6 p.m., another wave of Prussians shows up, this time plugging the holes in Wellington's exhausted front line. The trap was closing. Napoleon's whole plan to fight them one at a time, it had completely failed.
He's running out of time. So Napoleon does the unthinkable. He plays his last card. He sends in the Imperial Guard, his legendary, never-been-beaten's elite soldiers. This was it. One final, desperate charge to shatter Wellington's center before the Prussians could swallow him whole. It was a do-or-die moment. But Wellington's line didn't break. The Guard was thrown back, and for the first time, they were seen retreating. That's when the French army just fell apart.
And just like that, the battle was over. What came next was the total destruction of an army, the final end of an empire, and the birth of a saying we still use today.
But the cost, the human cost, was just staggering. The French army was devastated, losing something like 26,000 men. But Wellington and Blucher paid a terrible price too, with a combined 24,000 casualties on their side. The battlefield was just a scene of absolute carnage. Think about that. In about 10 hours of fighting, more than 50,000 men were killed, wounded, or went missing. It's a number that's almost impossible to wrap your head around, and it just shows you how brutal this day really was.
And, of course, the battle gave us something that's now part of our everyday language. You know the phrase, to meet one's Waterloo? It comes from this day. It means facing that final, unbeatable obstacle, a defeat you just can't come back from.
Just 4 days later, Napoleon gave up the throne for the second and final time. His 100 days were over. So in the end, Waterloo was this perfect storm of brilliant strategy, incredible bravery, and a few key moments that could have gone either way. Which leaves us with a huge what if, doesn't it? If that rain had never fallen, if the battle had kicked off just a few hours earlier, would any of us even know the phrase to meet one's Waterloo today?